Welcome to SleepLab Science. Tonight, as the world grows quiet and the night settles gently around you, I invite you to drift into a softer corner of reality, a place where science doesn't rush and knowledge doesn't demand anything from you. It simply sits beside you, like a warm, steady breath, and waits for you to join it. Here at SleepLab Science, we believe that learning can be slow, delicate, and deeply comforting. Even the most complex wonders of nature can be told like bedtime stories, calm, unhurried, and full of quiet curiosity. And tonight, we're going to wander into the secret world of plants, a world that breathes with us, shelters us, feeds us, and yet moves so gently that most of its miracles happen without a sound. So, let yourself settle. Feel your shoulders drift downward. Let your thoughts soften, just a little. Because in the next 2 hours, we'll explore 100 facts about plants, tiny truths, and ancient secrets, whispered across millions of years of evolution. Some will feel familiar, like old friends you forgot you knew. Others may feel strange, almost magical, as if nature has been hiding little stories in its leaves, waiting for the right moment to share them with you. And in this quiet moment, that moment has finally arrived. You don't need to focus too hard. You don't need to remember any of it. Just let the words pass through you, like a gentle wind crossing a field of grass. Slow, rhythmic, soft. Plants are some of Earth's oldest storytellers, older than the mountains, older than the rivers, older than nearly every creature that walks beside us today. They've seen continents drift, oceans rise, and stars shift in the sky. They've shaped civilizations, weathered extinctions, and painted the planet in colors we often take for granted. And though they stand still, they are alive with motion, decision, intelligence, and quiet resilience. So tonight, here on SleepLab Science, we're going to honor them, fact by fact, leaf by leaf, root by root. We'll follow the pulse of photosynthesis, the whispers of ancient forests, the secret electrical signals inside stems and flowers, and the strange, unexpected ways plants sense the world around them. As you listen, let your breathing match the slow rhythm of nature, in and out, like the calm rise and fall of a gentle tide. You're safe here. You're welcome here, and the night is still young. So, when you're ready, let's begin our slow, peaceful journey through 100 facts about plants. Here, on SleepLab Science, Fact 1: plants breathe in a rhythm older than the sky. If you sit quietly beside a plant, any plant, a fern, a house plant, a towering tree, you may feel as though nothing is happening. No movement, no breath, no pulse. But deep inside every leaf, every vein, every cell, plants are engaged in a gentle, continuous exchange with the world. A slow inhalation of carbon dioxide and a soft exhalation of oxygen. It's a rhythm older than the oceans, older than the moonlit patterns cast on Earth's surface, older even than the blue sky itself. Scientists believe that early plants transformed Earth's atmosphere long before animals walked the land, breathing life into the very air we now take in with every calming breath. Inside the green of each leaf lies chlorophyll, a molecule shaped almost like a tiny dish, perfectly designed to catch light. When sunlight touches it, energy rushes through microscopic pathways, splitting water into the purest forms of hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen drifts into the air quiet, invisible, life-giving. The hydrogen stays behind, fueling the plant's growth, repairing its tissues, building its tiny structures leaf by leaf. This entire process is called photosynthesis, but the name barely captures its elegance. It is more like the world's oldest miracle being performed every moment. Light becoming life. A silent alchemy that bridges the energy of a distant star and the breath in your lungs. Some plants even breathe at night, switching strategies, opening tiny pores called stomata when the darkness cools the air. These pores act like little mouths, opening and closing in patterns we can't see but nature knows by heart. And while we breathe in seconds, plants breathe in cycles of hours, days, even seasons. Their breath is slow, patient, and entirely unhurried, almost like the deep, grounding breaths you take before drifting into sleep. If you've ever wondered why a walk through a forest feels like a soft reset, it may be because you are stepping into a place engineered by nature to breathe with you. A quiet harmony, leaf to lung, a reminder that the air around you is not empty, but shared. And now, let's gently drift from the breath of plants to the heartbeats they hide beneath the soil. Fact: 2 plants have a hidden pulse beneath the earth. Though plants appear still, scientists have discovered that beneath the soil, they possess something remarkably similar to a heartbeat. It isn't a heartbeat like ours, no chambers, no muscles, no rhythmic thump. Instead, it's a gentle hydraulic pulse, a rise and fall of internal pressure that pushes water upward from root to leaf in slow, steady waves. This pulse is controlled by microscopic channels inside the plant's roots. These channels open and close in repeating patterns, allowing nutrients and water to flow upward in soft surges. Using specialized imaging techniques, researchers have observed this movement repeating every few hours, like a plant's version of a resting heartbeat. Quiet, intentional, ancient. The rhythm is driven by xylem, the plant's internal water system. These are long, hollow vessels stretching from the roots into the stems and leaves. As water evaporates from the leaf's surface, a process called transpiration, it pulls more water behind it, creating a continuous flow. This cycle is so efficient that tall trees can move water upward more than 100 meters without a single muscle. Some plants change their pulse depending on stress. When the soil becomes dry, the pulse slows. When water returns, it gently strengthens. Scientists have recorded faint ultrasonic clicks inside plants, believed to be tiny cavitation bubbles forming and popping within the xylem. It's as if the plant whispers its condition through the smallest vibrations. This pulse is not just about survival, it shapes the plant's entire life. It determines how fast a leaf unfurls, how strongly a stem grows, how flowers open in the morning like sleepy faces greeting the light. So while it may seem that plants are motionless, they are anything but. Their inner world is full of movement we simply move too quickly to notice. A world that beats, very slowly, beneath our feet. And as we move from pulse to perception, let's explore how plants quietly sense the world around them. Fact: 3 plants can see, smell, and react without eyes or noses. Plants do not have eyes, but they can see. They do not have noses, but they can smell. And though they lack ears, they can sense vibrations, sometimes even responding to sound. Their perception is beautifully subtle. At the heart of this sensing ability are photoreceptors, tiny proteins inside their cells that respond to different wavelengths of light. Some photoreceptors detect blue light, guiding stems upward. Others detect red light, helping plants know the time of day, the season, and when to flower. Plants even sense shadows, allowing them to determine when a nearby plant might be competing for sunlight. Plants can smell chemicals in the air, too. When a caterpillar chews on a leaf, the plant releases distress signals, volatile organic compounds that neighboring plants detect. Those neighbors then strengthen their defenses, producing bitter compounds to discourage herbivores. It is, in a way, a silent forest-wide whisper network. Root tips also act like sensory organs. They respond to gravity, moisture, nutrients, and even obstacles. When roots sense richer soil nearby, they grow toward it with purpose, adjusting their direction, almost like a slow-motion decision-making process. Some plants react to sound. Experiments have shown that certain flowers produce sweeter nectar when they hear the buzzing frequency of a pollinating bee, suggesting they can distinguish useful vibrations from meaningless ones. To sense without organs, to perceive without movement, to respond without voice. This is the quiet intelligence of plants. They interact with their environment constantly, gracefully, and silently. A different kind of awareness. Not loud or fast, but steady and ancient. Fact 4. Plants. Remember, even without a brain, plants have no neurons, no hippocampus, no brain as we understand it, and yet, they remember. Not in the human sense, not with stories or images or emotions, but through patterns written into their chemistry, their proteins, and the quiet architecture of their cells. Imagine a plant touched by a passing insect. The first time, it reacts slowly, its cells shifting, its ion channels opening just enough to sense what happened. But if the same type of touch happens again and again, the plant changes its response. It becomes faster, more precise, and more efficient. This is called habituation, a simple form of learning, long thought to belong only to animals. But plants do it, softly, silently, perfectly adapted to their stillness. Some species remember droughts. Weeks or months later, when water becomes scarce again, they shift their metabolism sooner, almost as if the past is whispering instructions to the present. Other plants remember light cycles. If you alter their day-night rhythm, they adjust, and when normal light returns, they anticipate dawn before it comes, opening their leaves just moments before the first photons arrive. Perhaps the most famous example is the Mimosa pudica, the touch-me-not plant. Drop it from a small height gently, safely, without harm, and the first time, it will fold its leaves tightly in alarm. But repeat it often enough, and something remarkable happens. It stops. It realizes the fall is harmless, and it remembers this for weeks. Memory, written not in neurons, but in ion flux, gene expression, and microstructural changes. A quiet intelligence born from stillness. And as we leave this soft mystery behind, we drift into an even deeper one. Fact 5. Plants can hear, in their own silent way. Not with ears, not with drums or bones or vibrating membranes. Plants sense sound through vibration, the tiny movements that ripple through air and soil. A caterpillar chewing on a leaf creates a specific vibration pattern, sharp, rhythmic, urgent. Scientists have shown that when a plant hears this chewing vibration, even without the caterpillar present, it primes its defenses, flooding its tissues with bitter or toxic chemicals, long before danger truly arrives. A seed underground senses the faint, low-frequency hum of flowing water. Even in complete darkness, it grows toward the sound, sending roots toward moisture it cannot see or smell, but can somehow feel. Some flowers bloom faster when exposed to the buzz of bees. The frequency of a bee's wings matches the vibration needed to loosen pollen within certain blossoms, so the sound itself becomes a cue. Prepare. A pollinator is near. In experiments, plants exposed to soothing, low-frequency hums grow slightly taller, with fuller leaves, while harsh, irregular vibrations can stunt them. To us, this world is silent, but to plants, it is full of tremors and whispers, messages carried not in words, but in waves. And from sound, we drift into something even stranger, something almost mystical. Fact 6. Plants communicate through underground networks. Beneath your feet, beneath forests, beneath fields and gardens, lies one of Earth's largest networks, a vast living web woven from fungal threads called mycelium. Through this web, plants trade, warn, negotiate, and share. A tree attacked by insects sends chemical signals through its roots into the fungal network. Moments later, neighboring trees, sometimes even trees of different species, activate their own defenses, as if receiving a quiet warning carried through the soil. Some plants send nutrients to their relatives. A mother tree can recognize her seedlings, distinguishing them from unrelated saplings, and feed them more carbon, nitrogen, or water through these hidden pathways. Other plants use the network to cheat. Parasites like the ghost pipe flower tap into the system without giving anything back. stealing sugars from their neighbors like silent bandits in the dark. And forests, true forests, are shaped by these underground conversations. Older trees stabilize younger ones during droughts by sending them water. Shade-tolerant species learn from the signals of sun-loving species higher in the canopy. Entire ecosystems pulse with information, nutrients, and subtle chemical messages. The forest is not a collection of individuals. It is a community interlinked, interdependent, alive in ways we're only beginning to understand. And as we rise gently from this underground world, we're ready to wander into the next quiet marvel waiting among the leaves. Fact 7. Plants can count, calculate, and conserve energy. It sounds impossible at first. A being without a nervous system, without neurons or brainwaves, performing something as delicate as calculation, and yet plants do. During the night, when the world darkens and photosynthesis sleeps, plants rely on stored starch to survive the hours until dawn. But they cannot exhaust it too quickly, nor conserve it too tightly. Either mistake would be fatal. So what do? They calculate. Mathematicians studying Arabidopsis, the humble model plant of laboratories, found that it divides its total starch reserves by the number of hours remaining until sunrise. A quiet arithmetic, a simple division problem, and it performs this calculation continuously, adjusting as the night grows shorter or unexpectedly longer. If scientists artificially shift sunset earlier than expected, the plant rewrites the equation instantly. If night lasts 4 hours longer than usual, it recalculates again, stretching its reserves with astonishing precision, so that dawn arrives with exactly the right amount of energy left. No panic, no error, just silent arithmetic beneath the leaves. Some researchers believe this isn't math as we know it, but a kind of biochemical computation arising from balancing sugar signals, enzyme rates, and oscillating internal clocks. But the result? It is unmistakably similar to the way animals pace their energy use. Plants, even in their stillness, are thinking in rhythms we are only just beginning to perceive. And as we drift from the quiet intelligence of energy to the quiet intelligence of movement, we arrive at another wonder. Fact 8. Plants move in slow motion, but with purpose. To the hurried human eye, plants seem motionless, but to time-lapse cameras, they are dancers. Leaves tilt toward sunlight, stems twist, reaching for warmth. Roots navigate through soil like explorers, solving a maze, choosing paths, avoiding toxins, seeking moisture. The sunflower doesn't just follow the sun. It performs a daily ritual called heliotropism, where each bud swings east to west, then resets at night, anticipating dawn as if longing for the light's return. The sensitive plant, Mimosa pudica, folds when touched, its cells rapidly losing water pressure like tiny collapsing balloons. The Venus flytrap snaps shut using one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom, an electrical impulse triggering a trap that closes in less than a second. And roots quiet. Hidden roots are the true movers. In experiments, they hesitate at obstacles, redirect themselves toward fertile soil, and even slow their growth as if pausing to think at difficult junctions. Plants are not statues. They are slow-motion creatures whose movements match the pace of seasons, sunlight, and water. If we lived as long as they do, perhaps we would move slowly too. And as we leave this gentle choreography behind, we drift into something even more ancient. Fact 9. Plants are older than forests, older than animals, older than bones. To understand plants is to understand time itself, because long before forests existed, before insects buzzed or birds filled the sky, before vertebrates walked the land, there were plants. The earliest ones were tiny, fragile mats of green clinging to damp rocks near ancient shorelines. No leaves, no flowers, just simple structures, capturing sunlight in a world that was still learning how to breathe oxygen. Over millions of years, these pioneers transformed Earth's atmosphere slowly, steadily, enormous in patience. They built the oxygen-rich world animals would someday depend on. They held the soil together before soil even had a name. They shaped rivers, softened coastlines, and set the stage for complex life to flourish. The first true forests rose around 385 million years ago, towering trees like watieza, tall as modern palms, but older than mammals, older than birds, older even than dinosaurs' earliest ancestors. These forests cooled the planet. They changed rainfall. They pulled carbon from the air and buried it deep beneath sediments, carbon that still fuels our world today. Plants are timekeepers, historians, architects of Earth itself. Every tree you see, every blade of grass, every mossy patch glowing softly on a stone, is part of a lineage older than almost anything else alive. And as this ancient green history settles softly around us, we're ready to wander into the next quiet truth waiting beneath the branches. Fact 10. Plants see the world through light. Plants do not have eyes, no pupils, no retinas, no lenses that curve images into focus. And yet, they see light with a level of sophistication that nearly rivals sight itself. Across their tissues, from the tips of their leaves to the hidden cells in their stems, plants are filled with photoreceptors, molecular sensors tuned to different colors of the spectrum. Red light, blue light, far red light, ultraviolet light. Each wavelength tells the plant something different. Blue light says, "A clear sky is above you. Grow stronger. Spread your leaves wide." Red light says, "The sun is rising or falling. Align your internal clock." Far red light whispers, "You're in the shade. Another plant may be above you." UV light warns, "Be careful. The sunlight is harsh today." Plants don't merely detect brightness. They detect information. By comparing red to far red light, a plant knows if it is overshadowed by others. If the ratio is wrong, the plant stretches long, thin, urgent, trying to outrun its neighbors for sunlight. If the ratio is perfect, it grows calmly, lovingly, spreading stable leaves for photosynthesis. Some species can even sense the direction of light, comparing tiny differences between cells. This allows seedlings buried in soil to know which way up is, even in complete darkness. Light is not just energy for plants. It is language. It is guidance. It is the way the world whispers its shape to them. And as we drift from the soft language of light, we enter another quiet sense plants keep hidden beneath the soil. Fact 11. Plants taste the soil and choose where to grow. Plants, astonishingly, have a sense of taste, not with tongues, but with root tips that explore the earth like curious fingertips. A root does not simply push blindly through dirt. It samples, it evaluates, it responds. When roots detect pockets of rich nitrogen, they branch eagerly, spreading themselves like explorers discovering treasure. When they sense phosphorus, they slow down, concentrate, and optimize absorption. But when they sense toxins, the response is immediate. The root recoils, bends away, avoids danger with a wisdom that seems almost animal. Roots can even tell the difference between nutrients bound to minerals and nutrients dissolved in water. They change their growth pattern depending on availability, conserving energy when soil is poor, expanding boldly when it is rich. Some plants can detect chemical signatures from nearby competitors. If a rival species is consuming nutrients aggressively, the roots shift strategy, either racing outward to claim more territory, or retreating and conserving energy for later speaker, or cooperating with fungal partners to gain an advantage. And when a plant's own offspring grow near its roots, something extraordinary happens. It softens. It grows less aggressively. It shares space instead of fighting it. Plants taste the soil not as animals taste fruit, but as entire organisms sensing the world that holds them. And from the subterranean whispers of roots, we rise again into the gentle architecture of leaves, where another quiet miracle unfolds. Fact 12. Leaves are living solar panels more advanced than anything humans have built. When sunlight touches a leaf, an ancient choreography begins, a performance billions of years old. Inside each leaf are chloroplasts, tiny green engines filled with pigments that absorb photons. But what happens next is extraordinary. The energy of sunlight is converted into electrical charges, passed from molecule to molecule in pathways so efficient that even our best solar technology pales beside them. Some chloroplasts actually move inside plant cells. During bright sunlight, they hide along the walls to prevent damage. During low light, they spread out to capture every photon they can find. Leaves can repair themselves from light damage, something man-made solar panels cannot do. They adjust the angle of their surfaces, fold and unfold, darken or lighten pigments, all to optimize the delicate balance between capturing energy and protecting themselves. And the veins of a leaf? They are not random. Their branching pattern is fractal, efficient, and mathematically optimized to ensure water, minerals, and sugars flow exactly where needed. Some species even change leaf shape depending on sunlight. In shade, leaves grow wider, thinner, softer. In harsh sun, they shrink, thicken, and toughen. A leaf is not a passive surface. It is a living solar array, a dynamic machine, a masterpiece of evolution hidden in plain sight. And now, with the quiet hum of photosynthesis lingering like a soft afterthought, we're ready to wander into the next gentle mystery plants hold within their stems and seeds. Fact 13. The whispering mathematics of leaf patterns. If you take a quiet moment, perhaps now, to look closely at a leaf, you might notice that its veins don't simply spread randomly. Instead, they follow an ancient geometry, a soft, living mathematics. Many leaves form their vein networks, using rules similar to those found in river deltas, lightning strikes, and even neural pathways. Scientists call this reticulate venation, a natural strategy that allows nutrients, sugars, and water to travel, even if part of the leaf becomes damaged. It's like nature's way of ensuring resilience, a built-in backup system, a safety net interwoven through green tissue. Some leaves follow spiral layouts that echo the Fibonacci sequence, letting sunlight touch every surface with gentle equality. Others grow in branching structures that mirror the fractal heartbeat of the universe, patterns within patterns, repeating softly into the micro-world. This hidden order helps the leaf regulate temperature, heal itself, and collect the exact amount of light it needs. Not too much, not too little. And the more scientists study these veins, the more we realize they are not merely conduits, but intelligent designs shaped by millions of quiet years. It's as if each leaf carries a map, a memory of the plant's ancestors, whispering, "This is the shape that allowed us to survive." And as we glide from one gentle truth to the next, we arrive at another hidden wonder of the plant kingdom. Fact 14. The secret electrical life of roots. Beneath our feet, in the cool darkness just below the surface of the soil, roots are doing something unexpected. They're not only searching for water or anchoring the plant, they're conducting tiny electrical signals, soft pulses that help the plant sense its environment. When a root tip touches a stone, or meets dry soil, or brushes against a pocket of moisture, it sends faint electrical impulses up the root system, like a message passed hand to hand through a quiet underground network. These signals tell the plant where to grow, where to slow down, and where to turn. It's remarkably similar to the way neurons communicate in animals, though far slower, far gentler, almost like the plant is thinking in long, deep breaths. Some studies even suggest that roots can detect gravity through electrical shifts, helping them know which direction leads deeper into the earth. They can sense nutrients from a distance, anticipate obstacles before touching them, and coordinate growth with neighboring roots. It may not be thought in the human sense, but it is awareness, quiet, grounded awareness. And with that soft electric hum fading behind us, let's drift toward another subtle marvel of the living green world. Fact 15. Plants remember rain. It sounds poetic, almost mythic, but plants carry a form of memory. When rain falls on a leaf, tiny mechanical receptors on its surface register the impact, each droplet a little tap of information. The plant then activates a temporary biochemical memory, lasting minutes or hours, so it won't overreact if more rain arrives. This prevents false alarms, unnecessary defenses, wasted energy. It's a little like your body remembering a gentle touch, so the second touch feels familiar rather than surprising. Scientists call this mechanism mechanical priming, and it's surprisingly sophisticated. If the rain pattern changes from soft drizzle to heavy downpour, the plant updates its memory and adjusts. It knows when to conserve resources, and when a genuine threat, like a storm carrying pathogens, might require stronger protection, this rain memory fades gradually, like a watercolor dissolving. But for a brief moment, the plant carries the echo of the clouds. And as that memory softens into stillness, we continue our slow journey into the hidden depths of botanical wonder. Fact 16. The plant that counts the hours of night. Some plants do something surprisingly delicate. They count the darkness. Inside their cells lives a molecular clock, a gentle biochemical pendulum that ticks not with sound, but with shifting proteins. This internal rhythm helps the plant measure how long the night has lasted, and this matters deeply for survival. For many species, flowering depends not on the warmth of spring or the brightness of day, but on the precise number of hours without light. A plant can tell the difference between 9 hours of night and 10, between a shortening winter dusk and a lengthening summer evening. This timekeeping mechanism is called photoperiodism. It lets plants release blossoms at the perfect moment, not too early when frost may return, not too late when pollinators have moved on. It's a soft synchronization with the turning earth, a quiet partnership between life and the rotation of the planet. Imagine that, a flower blooming because it counted the night and felt the world was ready. And from this gentle measurement of darkness, we drift onward to another secret sense hidden within the green. Fact 17. Plants can smell the air around them. It feels almost impossible, almost storybook. Yet plants can smell, not with noses, but with an intricate sensitivity to airborne chemicals drifting through the breeze. When a leaf is chewed by an insect, it releases a specific aroma, a chemical cry for help. Nearby plants detect this scent through receptors on their surfaces and respond by strengthening their defenses, producing bitter compounds or tougher tissues before the danger reaches them. This process is called volatile organic compound signaling, and it's astonishingly precise. Some plants can even distinguish what kind of insect is attacking their neighbor, a caterpillar, a beetle, or a different leaf eater altogether, and adjust their response accordingly. It's as though the forest breathes information, and each plant inhales meaning from the air, a quiet communication carried on in visible currents. And as those chemical whispers fade into the stillness, we move gracefully into the next soft truth. Fact 18. The soft pulse of plant hydraulics. Inside every stem, every leaf, every curling tendril, there is a gentle pulse, not a heartbeat, but a constant movement of water, rising and falling in silent currents. Plants lift water from the soil to their tallest leaves, using a blend of cohesion, tension, and evaporation, a system scientists call the cohesion-tension mechanism. It is one of the most elegant pieces of physics found in nature. When sunlight touches a leaf, a single molecule of water evaporates. This creates a tiny pool, so tiny it seems impossible. Yet when multiplied by billions of molecules, it becomes strong enough to draw water all the way from the roots to the canopy. Some trees lift water more than 100 meters high without a single pump, without a heart, without a sound. Just the pure physics of attraction and tension, a quiet river flowing through living wood. This hydraulic flow cleans the plant's tissues, cools its surfaces, and carries nutrients upward like a soft, endless tide. And as we leave behind that silent inner river, we continue drifting deeper into the calm mysteries of plant life. Fact 19. Seeds that sleep longer than civilizations. Seeds possess a patience that stretches far beyond human time. Some lie dormant for decades, others for centuries, and a rare few can wait for thousands of years before choosing to awaken. In archaeological sites, scientists have discovered lotus seeds preserved in ancient lakebeds, seeds that sprouted after more than a millennium of sleep. The oldest known example was nearly 1,300 years old, a tiny, hardened capsule of life that outlived empires, languages, and entire eras of the human story. Seeds enter this deep slumber by reducing their metabolism to the faintest whisper, a biological stillness so complete that time almost forgets them. Their protective coats seal in genetic instructions, nutrients, and hope, as if they're waiting for the world to feel safe again. Some desert seeds will not wake unless they sense the precise chemical signature of rare rainfall. Others need fire, the heat of a passing blaze signaling that the forest canopy has opened and new light awaits. Inside each seed is both memory and possibility, the past held gently beside the future. And as we rise from this ancient patience, we drift quietly into another subtle intelligence of the plant world. Fact 20. Plants listen to the pull of the moon. It might sound mythical, something whispered in old stories, but many plants follow the rhythm of the moon. Sap levels in trees rise and fall in sync with lunar phases. Certain species open and close their leaves differently during the full moon, and plants growing in intertidal zones adjust their internal clocks to match the timing of the tides, even when removed from the ocean entirely. This sensitivity is called circulunar rhythm. It's a biological timekeeper, tuned to the moon's gravitational pull. For centuries, farmers noticed that seeds planted during certain moon phases sprouted more vigorously. Today, scientists understand why. Changes in Earth's water distribution, triggered by lunar gravity, subtly influence soil moisture, sap pressure, and cellular water flow. It's gentle, almost imperceptible, but plants feel it. They move with the moon the way a slow dancer follows a distant drumbeat, steady, unwavering, ancient. And as that lunar rhythm settles into silence, we drift toward another quiet marvel, hidden in the green. Fact 21. The murmured light of bioluminescent plants that once were. Long ago, before modern forests existed, the earth held plants that glowed softly in the night. Ancient lineages of fungi-like plants and early organisms carried bioluminescent compounds, chemical lanterns that shimmered through prehistoric dusk. Although most glowing plants are long extinct, their echoes remain. Some modern organisms, like certain ferns and algae, still carry remnants of these light-producing pathways, and researchers today are working to reawaken this ancient glow using harmless genes from bioluminescent fungi. The idea is not fantasy. A few experimental plants have already emitted faint light, a ghostly green shimmer visible only in very dark rooms. It's delicate, fragile, like fireflies breathing inside the veins. If one day city streets are lined with softly glowing trees instead of electric lamps, that future will come from rediscovering something Earth once knew well. And as that faint prehistoric glow fades gently into the night, we glide onward, deeper into the serene wonders waiting in the world of plants. Fact 22. Trees that speak through underground fungi. Deep beneath the forest floor, in the cool, unseen world of soil and shadow, trees are connected by something remarkable. A vast network of microscopic fungal threads called mycorrhizae. These threads lace through the earth like delicate white filaments, binding root to root, tree to tree, species to species, until the entire forest becomes a single breathing organism. Through this network, trees exchange nutrients, warnings, and even what scientists gently call resource donations. Old trees send sugars to young seedlings struggling in the shade. Injured trees release chemical signals into the network, alerting their neighbors to strengthen their defenses before danger reaches them. Some call it the wood wide web. Others call it forest intelligence. But whatever name it carries, it is one of the most quietly beautiful collaborations in nature. This symbiosis is ancient, older than flowers, older than mammals, older than birdsong, a partnership stretching back 450 million years. And as we leave this underground whispering network behind, we drift toward another gentle marvel of plant communication. Fact: 23 plants gently heal themselves like slow-moving architects. When a plant is wounded by wind, by insects, or by accident, it does not rush. It does not panic. It simply begins the slow, deliberate process of healing. Cells around the injury rapidly divide, forming a protective barrier called callus tissue, a soft, living bandage. Over time, new vessels form, reconnecting the flow of water and nutrients. Lignin, one of the strongest natural materials on Earth, is deposited to seal the wound. Trees take this further. They do not heal damage the way animals do. Instead, they compartmentalize it, building walls around the injured area to prevent decay from spreading. This process, known as caudate compartmentalization of decay in trees, is so effective that a tree can live for centuries with old wounds safely locked away inside, like sealed rooms in a cathedral filled with quiet history. Healing, for plants, is slow, patient, and endlessly persistent. And as that gentle resilience settles into stillness, we drift softly onward to another quiet green wonder. Fact 24. Some plants move faster than you can blink. Most plants live at a pace that feels like deep time, measured in the slow unfurling of leaves and the steady stretching of stems. But a few break this rule with astonishing speed. The Venus flytrap snaps shut in less than 1/10 of a second, faster than the blink of an eye. It uses a spring-loaded mechanism inside its cells, storing elastic energy until 2 tiny trigger hairs are touched in quick succession. Only then does it fire, avoiding false alarms from raindrops or drifting debris. Other plants move too. The Mimosa pudica, or shy plant, folds its leaves instantly when touched. The sundew curls its glistening tentacles around, trapped insects with slow, deliberate precision. Even the stamens of certain flowers can catapult pollen into the air at incredible speeds. These rapid movements rely not on muscles, but on the sudden shifting of water between cells. A hydraulic burst, a pressure change, a whisper of physics unfolding inside living tissue. In a world where stillness seems absolute, plants remind us that motion can be subtle, surprising, and beautifully alive. And with that fleeting burst of movement fading into quiet, we prepare to wander gently toward the next cluster of botanical wonders. Fact 25. Plants remember more than we think. In the soft, patient world of plants, memory doesn't look like ours. There are no neurons, no synapses, no electrical storms of thought. And yet, plants do remember. Not in stories or images, but in gentle biochemical echoes that linger long after an event has passed. When a plant experiences drought, it records the stress by altering hormone levels inside its tissues. Even after water returns, these hormonal signals stay elevated for days or weeks, teaching the plant to conserve moisture more efficiently the next time. A plant that survives a cold snap stores that experience in the structure of its proteins and the expression of particular genes, a process scientists call stress imprinting. With this imprint, the plant becomes better prepared for future frost, as if whispering to itself, "We've been through this before. We know what to do." Some plants even pass memory forward. The children of stressed plant seeds, formed long after the event, sometimes grow with heightened resilience, as though inheriting a soft echo of what their parents endured. In experiments, plants have demonstrated another kind of memory, timing. They can anticipate sunrise, predict the return of insects that feed at specific hours, and even adjust the opening and closing of their leaves to match a rhythm learned from the environment. No nervous system, no brain, just quiet cycles of chemistry and light. And yet, the forest is full of memory, woven into leaves, written into roots, whispered through xylem and phloem, like a message carried in slow, patient breath. Plants remember, not by thinking, but by becoming, slightly different than they were before. And with that gentle transformation drifting into stillness, we pause here, at the edge of the next fact, letting the forest settle into silence for a moment. Before we wander on again, Fact 26. The ancient bristlecone pines. If you ever find yourself wandering through the high, wind-swept mountains of the American West, you might stumble upon a presence so old, so impossibly patient, that it almost feels like time itself decided to grow roots. The bristlecone pine. These trees do not rush. They do not bloom loudly or rise quickly. Instead, they endure slowly, quietly carving their story into the very fibers of their bodies. Some of them are nearly 5,000 years old, which means they were alive long before the pyramids rose, long before writing became common, long before history remembered anything at all. And the amazing thing is, they remember everything. Inside, a bristlecone pine lies a chronicle, a soft, spiraling diary of Earth's climate, stretching back thousands of years. Each ring is not only a record of growth, but a delicate measurement of seasons. A cold year, a warm year, a year when storms were harsh or when water was generous. And because bristlecone pines grow so slowly, sometimes adding less than a millimeter of new wood per year, the details they preserve are astonishingly precise. The cold snap of a distant century, the drought that once lasted a generation, the subtle shift of temperatures long before humans began recording such things. All of it is still there, tucked quietly beneath bark that has survived millennia of wind. Scientists call them timekeepers, but that title feels small. These trees are more like guardians of memory. Their wood is dense with resin, resisting decay. Their needles remain on the tree for over 30 years longer than the entire lifespan of many fast-growing species. Their shapes twist into ancient spirals, sculpted slowly by wind and sand and silence, each curve a testament to endurance over ambition. And yet, even surrounded by the harshest conditions, thin air, freezing nights, scorching sunlight, they remain gentle participants in their landscape, providing slow shelter, slow shade, slow presence. When researchers core these trees, they don't cut them down. They take only a thin sample, no thicker than a straw. And the tree continues living, unbothered, continuing its quiet recording of time. What makes the bristlecone so magical is not simply its age, but its patience. Because in each narrow ring, it whispers something profound. You don't have to rush to matter. You don't need speed to leave a mark. Sometimes, simply enduring, simply being, is enough to change the world. And as we step away from its ancient trunk, we carry with us a truth that hums softly, like wind through its twisted branches. Time moves forward. But memory can take root. Our Fact 27 orchids and their secret partnership with fungi. If you were to hold an orchid seed in your hand, you might be surprised by how impossibly small it is. It isn't like a sunflower seed, or a grain of rice, or anything with a solid reserve of energy. An orchid seed is practically dust, so tiny, so weightless that wind can carry it for miles. And inside that tiny speck, there is no food, no nourishment, no stored energy to survive. It is empty. And yet, it dreams of growing into one of the most elegant and intricate flowers on Earth. But to do this, an orchid must rely on a quiet, ancient alliance, one woven below the forest floor, where light never reaches. A partnership with fungi. When an orchid seed lands on the forest floor, it does not germinate on its own. It cannot. Instead, it waits. Still and silent, hoping that a thread-like fungus will brush against it. And if it is lucky, the fungus enters the seed, wrapping it in thin, glowing filaments mycorrhizae. The fungus becomes a surrogate parent. It feeds the seed. It lends its strength. It gives what the seed cannot find for itself: water, minerals, and the gentle chemical signals that say, "Wake up." This relationship continues, even as the orchid matures, its roots forming tiny networks of exchange nutrients for sugars, support for support. It's a symbiosis, written not with words, but with mutual need. Many orchids remain loyal to a single species of fungus. Others form flexible bonds, partnering with whatever life they find in the soil. But all orchids, in some way, rely on this quiet underground companionship. And it is only after years, sometimes decades, that the orchid finally rises from the forest floor. A slow, deliberate emergence. A bloom that seems almost too delicate for the world that created it. Its petals curve like soft porcelain. Its colors shift in gradients and glows. Its shapes mimic insects, birds, and even faces evolution, sculpting each one with almost artistic precision. And when you see an orchid bloom, it's easy to think the beauty is the flower itself. But truly, its real beauty is the partnership that made it possible. A reminder whispering beneath the surface. Even the smallest life can flourish when it is not afraid to accept help. And even the most delicate bloom is rooted in unseen friendship. Our fact: 28 mangrove forests, guardians of the coast. If you've ever walked along a tropical shoreline at low tide, you may have seen them gnarled trees standing ankle-deep in brackish water, like guardians at the edge of land and sea. Mangroves. They do not sway like palms. They do not stretch tall like oaks. Instead, they root themselves in muddy, shifting worlds, where few trees dare to grow. And what makes mangroves extraordinary is not simply where they live, but what they quietly protect. Mangroves anchor coastlines with a woven web of roots, some arching like stilts, others snaking underground like braided ropes. These roots trap sediments, slowing erosion, building new land grain by grain. Without them, many coasts would simply wash away. But their protection goes deeper. When storms roar in from the sea, cyclones, hurricanes, the heavy fists of wind, mangrove forests absorb the impact. They break the waves. They scatter the force. They transform violent energy into gentle ripples before it reaches inland communities. Scientists call them natural barriers. But if you listen closely, they feel more like caretakers. And beneath their branches exists an entire miniature world. Baby fish weave between roots like children exploring a jungle gym. Crabs climb bark, hiding in crevices. Oysters cling to exposed roots, filtering water with each slow breath. Mudskippers fish that can walk perch on roots like tiny amphibious monks. It's a nursery for marine life, a refuge for birds, a pantry for coastal ecosystems. Mangroves breathe in a fascinating way. Some send up snorkel-like roots called pneumatophores, tiny chimneys reaching above the mud to take in oxygen. Others filter salt from seawater, storing it in leaves or excreting it through glands. Their survival strategies are endless, inventive, patient. And yet, the most magical thing about mangroves is their quiet generosity. They protect coastlines without asking for anything. They build ecosystems without applause. They hold the line between land and sea with slow, steady resilience. A humbling reminder: the strongest guardians are often the ones who stand quietly in the water, asking for nothing, yet giving everything. Fact 29. The water secrets of succulents. Some plants chase the rain. Succulents keep it. In the harsh deserts where sunlight bleaches color from stone and the air steals moisture with every breath, succulents have discovered a way to survive, not through speed, but through stillness. Their leaves, plump, smooth, cool to the touch, are not simply leaves. They are reservoirs, slowly filled, slowly guarded, slowly released. Inside each succulent leaf lies a gel-like matrix of water-binding molecules. These molecules act like gentle hands, holding onto moisture long after the rains have vanished. Even when the soil dries and the wind turns fierce, the plant remains hydrated from within. And succulents have another secret: pressure. The water inside them creates what botanists call turgor pressure, a slow, internal firmness that gives succulents their iconic shape. It's why a well-watered succulent looks full and rounded, while a dehydrated one shrinks softly inward. They're patient drinkers. When rain finally arrives, they take in water rapidly, storing it across leaves, stems, and roots. But they do not waste a drop. Their skin is thick and waxy, a barrier against evaporation. Their pores, tiny openings called stomata, stay closed during the day to conserve moisture. Only at night, when the world cools and the air softens, do they open and inhale carbon dioxide. A reversed rhythm, a desert adaptation. Some succulents grow spines instead of leaves, reducing surface area. Others bury themselves partially underground, hiding from the sun. Still others form tight rosettes, funneling dew into their centers like tiny bowls. All of them, in their own quiet ways, practice the same philosophy. Take only what you need, save what you can, and bloom when the world least expects it. Because succulents do bloom brilliantly. Their flowers burst forth in colors that defy the desert: pink, orange, gold, crimson. A soft explosion of life built on years of waiting. A gentle reminder that patience is not emptiness. It is preparation. Fact: 30 pitcher plants and their tiny rainforest worlds. Deep in the humid stillness of tropical forests, there are plants that blur the line between leaf and creature. Pitcher plants. Their leaves curl into elegant cups, delicate vessels filled with clear, glistening liquid. To an insect, these cups smell sweet, almost inviting. To a scientist, they are micro-ecosystems, entire tiny worlds contained within a single leaf. The pitcher is not just a trap, it is a habitat. Inside the fluid live mosquito larvae, bacteria, protozoa, small worms, each species interacting in a miniature food web. The plant doesn't digest everything alone. It lets its tiny tenants help break down prey. A shared feast, a cooperative digestion. The rim of the pitcher is slippery, almost glassy. Some species develop ridges that act like slides when wet. A single raindrop can turn the lip into a frictionless surface. One misstep and an ant tumbles inward. And yet, far from being sinister, pitcher plants are miracles of adaptation. They grow where soil is poor, where nutrients are scarce. Rather than competing with neighboring plants for nitrogen, they simply found a new source: insects. But pitcher plants do more than trap prey. They shape entire ecological communities. A fallen leaf becomes shelter for frogs. A wide pitcher becomes a nursery for tadpoles. A cluster of pitchers becomes a tiny city for microorganisms. Each one is a little rainforest in itself. Even their colors are strategic. Some glow translucent red, guiding insects inside. Others produce ultraviolet patterns visible only to pollinators. Still others emit faint heat, mimicking the warmth of decaying matter. Yet, despite all these complex adaptations, the plant remains still, silent, patient. It teaches us something simple. Even in a world of competition, cooperation continues to bloom. Fact 31. Algae and the gentle breath of the ocean. If you could sink beneath the waves, drifting between the soft beams of underwater sunlight, you would find the quiet workers of Earth's atmosphere, the algae. They don't stand tall. They don't bloom with petals. They don't sway in the wind like trees. But they breathe for us, tirelessly. Algae, microscopic and massive, single-celled and forest-like, carry out photosynthesis beneath the waves, producing a large portion of the oxygen our planet relies on. Some estimates say more than half of the oxygen you inhale came not from forests, but from tiny drifting algae in the ocean. They float in the sunlit layer of the sea, a shimmering cloud of life called phytoplankton. Each cell is small, so small you could fit thousands on the head of a pin, but in their sheer numbers, they shape the world. They absorb carbon dioxide. They release oxygen with every gentle pulse. They support entire marine food webs, feeding everything from zooplankton to whales. Larger algae like kelp form underwater forests, towering columns of life that sway like liquid cathedrals. Fish weave between them. Seals sleep in their shadows. Crabs hide along their stems. And all the while, algae continue their quiet work. Sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, oxygen, a slow, repeating rhythm. The ocean's own breath. Without algae, Earth would lose more than beauty. It would lose balance, because in their stillness, these tiny plants perform a miracle. They renew the air for a world far above them, a reminder whispered through the tides. Great impact doesn't always come from size. Sometimes it comes from persistence, from rhythm, from the gentle work done quietly, day after day. Fact: 32 banyan trees, the forest that grows from one tree. If you've ever stood beneath a banyan tree, you know the feeling. It's like stepping under the roof of a living cathedral. Columns rise everywhere, arching, spreading, branching, yet they are all one tree. Banyans do not grow only upward. They grow outward, sending down long aerial roots that dangle from branches like threads of an unfinished tapestry. At first, these roots are thin, almost delicate, swaying gently in the wind. But when they finally reach the earth, they harden, they thicken, they become trunks. And suddenly, what used to be just one branch becomes a new pillar, another support for the canopy above, then another, and another. A single banyan tree can create hundreds of trunks, a single life form, slowly becoming a forest. Some of the largest banyans cover over an acre of land, shading entire communities of birds, insects, reptiles, and travelers seeking rest. Their canopies stretch like green oceans, vast and calm. Their roots weave together like ancient hands holding the earth. But what makes banyans truly magical is their philosophy of growth. They don't rush upward to compete for sunlight. They invite the ground to rise and meet them. They expand sideways, creating space for life beneath. Their wisdom is in connection, not ascent. And beneath their shade, temperatures drop, moisture lingers, soil becomes richer, the world beneath them becomes gentler. In India, some villages hold meetings beneath banyans. In old stories, sages meditated under their branches. Travelers rested at their roots for centuries, because a banyan doesn't just stand in the landscape, it becomes a place, a gathering, a sanctuary, a gentle reminder you don't have to grow alone. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is reach downward, reach outward, and let your roots become bridges for others. Fact 33: Desert wildflowers and the art of waiting. In deserts where the horizon trembles with heat and days pass without a cloud in sight, there is a miracle that unfolds only once in many years. A bloom so spectacular, so unexpected, that it turns barren land into a sea of color. The desert wildflowers. For most of their existence, these flowers remain invisible. Their seeds sleep beneath the sand, tiny capsules of hope wrapped in patience. Not for days, not for months, but sometimes for decades. They wait for something very specific, an alignment of rain, temperature, sunlight, and timing so perfect that it might not happen again for a generation. And when it comes, they know. Even before the first sprouts push through the soil, the desert itself seems to hold its breath. The seeds swell, the crust of sand softens, life stirs quietly, secretly. And then one morning there they are, splashes of purple and gold, river-like carpets of pink, orange, and white. Each bloom delicate, fleeting, shimmering like a dream across the landscape. For a few weeks, the desert becomes a gallery of colors. Bees arrive, drawn as if by memory. Beetles trace patterns between petals. Birds dip and weave between blossoms. The landscape transforms, softens, brightens, and just as quickly as it appears, it fades. The flowers live fast, absorbing sunlight, producing seeds, and returning to rest before the desert heat rises again. But their seeds remain, tiny archives of potential, waiting for the next rainfall that whispers, now. Their entire existence is built on trust. Trust that patience will be rewarded, that stillness is not stagnation, that waiting is its own form of strength, a reminder carried in each petal. Beauty does not always bloom on schedule. Sometimes it arrives only when the world is finally ready for it. Fact 34. How plants sense gravity. If you plant a seed upside down, something fascinating happens. Even before it breaks the soil, the seed knows which way is up and which way is down. Roots begin their quiet descent into the earth. Shoots curl steadily toward the sky. There is no confusion, only certainty. Plants sense gravity through tiny structures inside their cells called statoliths. Think of them as soft, shifting grains of sand, dense, heavy, responsive. These little particles settle downward due to gravity, triggering signals that guide growth. When a root senses statoliths gathering at its lower side, it responds by elongating cells differently on each side, causing the root to bend downward. Stems do the opposite, bending upward toward light. This process is called gravitropism, a word soft and scientific, but the phenomenon itself feels almost poetic. Even in complete darkness, plants orient themselves. Even without eyes, they perceive direction. Even without movement, they respond. It is their quiet conversation with the earth. Some plants twist, some arch, some spiral upward as if they're listening to a subtle pull from the sky. Climbing vines feel both gravity below and sunlight above, weaving a path between the two. And this sensing continues throughout life. If a tree is knocked sideways by a storm, its trunk slowly rights itself, growing a new upward curve. If a vine falls to the ground, its tips rise again, searching for structure. Gravity does not rule them, but it guides them, gently, constantly. A calm reminder whispered through roots and stems. Even when life feels upside down, there is something inside you that still knows which direction leads to light. Fact 35. The quiet thieves. Parasitic plants, like mistletoe, high in the branches of winter trees. There is a plant you often see during the holidays. Mistletoe, floating like a green island in a leafless sea. But mistletoe holds a secret. It is a thief. Not a violent one, not a destructive one, but a subtle borrower, tapping into its host with delicate threads called haustoria. These structures slip into the tree's tissues, drawing water and minerals without taking the host's life. A parasitic plant, but also a gentle one. Mistletoe doesn't root in the ground. Its seeds are spread by birds, often by sticky berries that cling to beaks until wiped onto a branch. Once the seed settles, it waits for the right moment to send a tiny probe beneath the bark. The host tree barely feels it. The mistletoe simply shares the flow of sap, growing slowly, steadily, quietly. And though it borrows, it also gives. Birds nest in mistletoe clusters. Insects shelter between its leaves. Deer snack on its shoots. Butterflies depend on it during parts of their life cycle. It becomes a miniature ecosystem suspended in the air, a world built on delicate balance rather than harm. Other parasitic plants behave differently. Dodder vines wrap themselves around stems like golden threads, tapping into multiple hosts at once. Rafflesia, the world's largest flower, grows entirely inside its host vine, emerging only to bloom its enormous, startling blossom. They are unusual, strange, fascinating, but mistletoe remains the softest of them all. a plant that survives not through force, but through quiet dependence. A reminder woven into its branches. Needing others is not weakness. Even in nature, survival is often a shared story. Fact 36. The hidden life of plant roots. Beneath your feet, in the deep silence of soil, there is a world more intricate than any tapestry woven by hand. A world of roots. We often admire the leaves, the flowers, the towering trunks, but roots are the real architects of a plant's life. They search, sense, communicate, and build the hidden foundations that keep everything above alive. A root tip may be tiny, soft, pale, almost fragile, but it feels its way through soil with astonishing precision. It detects moisture, it senses nutrients, it avoids rocks and obstacles, it listens to chemical signals from neighboring plants, and when it finds what it needs, it branches, unfolding like a quiet thought. Roots release compounds into the soil, communicating with fungi and bacteria. They invite friendly microbes closer, forming partnerships that help them absorb nutrients. They warn neighboring plants when danger approaches. A nibbling insect, a drought, a pathogen drifting through the soil. And all of this happens in darkness. No sunlight, no color, no sound. Only information moving through water films and tiny spaces between grains of earth. In forests, roots of different trees often intertwine. Old trees share nutrients with younger ones. Fungal networks transport carbon across distances. It is a community beneath the ground, a whispering network known as the Wood Wide Web. Roots also shape the land itself. They hold soil in place. They prevent erosion. They guide the flow of water. They sculpt hillsides and stream banks over centuries. Yet, despite their power, roots remain humble, hidden, unseen. A quiet reminder, the strongest support systems are often the ones no one notices. Steady, silent, and essential. Fact 37. The ancient memory stored inside plant seeds. Every seed is a small universe of memory, a tiny capsule carrying not only life, but instructions, timing, resilience, and echoes of climates thousands of years old. If you hold a seed between your fingers, a grain of wheat, a sunflower seed, a speck of orchid dust, you are holding a biological time machine. Seeds remember drought, they remember flood, they remember the length of winters their ancestors survived, and the heat of summers they endured. All this information lives in their DNA, folded neatly, like pages in a microscopic book. Inside the seed coat is a plant in slow motion paused mid-breath. Embryonic leaves, tiny roots, stored starch for the first days of life. Everything needed to become a towering tree or a delicate flower lies dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Some seeds wait only days, others wait centuries. Lotus seeds found in ancient lake beds have sprouted after more than 1,000 years of stillness. Their biological clocks, patient and unhurried. Certain desert seeds remain asleep until rain patterns match the exact moisture conditions of storms that may occur only once every few decades. It's as if they refuse to waste their single chance at life. And when the moment finally arrives, warmth, moisture, light, the seed senses it. Enzymes activate like old machinery stirring to life. The seed coat softens, the embryo stretches, the root pierces downward with quiet determination. A sprout rises, carrying with it the memory of all the plants that came before. Seeds are reminders that even the smallest things can hold futures larger than imagination. And as we rise from this slumbering spark of life, let's drift into the elegant technology plants use to build themselves. Fact 38. The perfect engineering of plant stem architecture. Plant stems look simple on the outside, slender, upright, gentle, but within them lies one of nature's most remarkable engineering systems. A stem is not merely a support, it is a living bridge, a structural column, and a multi-layered highway built with astonishing efficiency. Inside a stem, two major transport networks run side by side, xylem, and phloem. Xylem carries water upward from the roots in continuous columns that defy gravity. It uses the physics of cohesion, water molecules pulling each other upward like a chain of tiny hands. This tension can lift water more than 100 meters high in giant trees. Without pumps, without engines, without sound. Phloem, in contrast, transports sugars downward and outward, feeding every bud and leaf. These pipelines move sap by pressure changes, adjusting flow depending on where energy is needed most. A new leaf? A growing fruit? A healing wound? The phloem senses it all and responds. Stems also adapt to stress. When winds push, stems thicken. When shade threatens, stems elongate toward light. Trees experiencing repeated winds develop compression wood or tension wood, strengthening themselves intelligently. And even in the smallest herbs, stems house a beautiful geometry. Vascular bundles arranged in spirals or rings, patterns that optimize strength and transport. A plant's posture is not accidental, it is a physical expression of its internal mathematics. From seedling to towering canopy, stems act as the quiet architects of plant life. And now, after exploring these inner highways, let's glide into the silent mystery of how plants sense light with exquisite precision. Fact 39. How plants see light without eyes. Plants, though lacking eyes, perceive light with a sensitivity far beyond human vision. Their world is painted not in color alone, but in gradients of energy, direction, and duration. Within plant cells live special molecules called photoreceptors, each tuned like an instrument to a different wavelength. Phytochromes detect red and far red light, telling plants whether they are in sunlight or shade. Cryptochromes sense blue light, controlling circadian rhythms and growth patterns. UVB receptors protect plants from ultraviolet rays, triggering the production of protective pigments. These receptors act like tiny eyes, gathering information about sunrise, sunset, season, canopy cover, cloudiness, even the presence of neighboring plants whose leaves reflect certain wavelengths. Through these signals, plants adjust stem length, leaf size, flower timing, and root depth. They don't simply detect light, they interpret it. A seed buried in soil decides when to rise using faint hints of red light penetrating the earth. A vine growing along a trellis finds its way by sensing shadows. Desert plants use light quality to determine whether rain clouds are passing or if drought persists. Plants can even distinguish the direction light is coming from, with remarkable precision. A cell facing the sun slows its growth slightly, while the shaded side elongates, creating curvature. This is how a sprout bends gracefully toward a window, as if greeting the daylight with a soft bow. Plants see the world in a language of photons, a quiet vision guiding every movement and every choice. And now, let's move from the brightness of light into the cool, steady heartbeat of plant water cycles. Fact 40. The quiet journey of water through a plant. Water in a plant travels with a softness that feels almost like meditation, steady, upward, unbroken. It begins in the soil, slipping between grains of sand and clay, then entering root hairs, only a single cell thick. From there, it steps cell to cell, moving across membranes, pulled gently toward the xylem's vertical corridors. Once inside the xylem, water begins a journey powered, not by pumps, but by evaporation from leaves. Each droplet leaving a leaf's surface pulls the next, which pulls the next, forming a continuous chain stretching from canopy to earth. This process, called transpiration, is incredibly strong yet incredibly fragile. A single air bubble can break the chain, like a bead slipping off a string. To prevent this, xylem vessels are reinforced with lignin, forming some of the toughest biological material on Earth. Water doesn't just move upward, it carries minerals, cools the plant, shapes the microclimate around leaves, and fuels photosynthesis by splitting into hydrogen and oxygen. At night, when the air becomes still and moist, the flow slows. Some plants even exude droplets at leaf edges, a gentle release known as guttation, like tiny tears reflecting moonlight. The journey of water through a plant is not hurried. It is a quiet ascent, a vertical river climbing toward the sun. And as we leave this gentle stream, we drift toward a vibrant mystery, the pigments that paint the plant world. Fact 41. The hidden chemistry behind plant colors. Plant colors are more than decoration. They are chemical messages, survival strategies, and optical illusions, created through a dance of molecules. Green arises from chlorophyll, absorbing red and blue light, while reflecting the calming green hues we associate with nature. But hidden beneath this green are yellows, oranges, and reds, waiting patiently for their season. Carotenoids produce warm golds and oranges, protecting leaves from excess sunlight. Anthocyanins craft deep purples and reds, shifting color depending on pH, temperature, and even stress. Betalains create electric magentas and yellows in beets and cacti, a separate evolutionary pathway entirely. When autumn arrives, chlorophyll breaks down first, revealing the hidden palette beneath. Trees don't gain new colors, they uncover the ones they always had, like deep emotions brought to light only when the busyness of summer fades. Colors serve practical purposes too. They attract pollinators, warn herbivores, shield tissues from ultraviolet radiation, and regulate heat. Some flowers reflect ultraviolet patterns visible only to bees, invisible masterpieces guiding pollinators toward nectar. Even the blue of rare flowers like hydrangeas isn't a pigment at all, but a chemical illusion involving metal ions and cellular acidity. Plant colors are chemistry performing art, and from these quiet pigments, we drift to a final sensory world, the vibrations plants can sense. Fact 42. The subtle way plants hear vibrations. It might sound like imagination, but plants can hear, not through ears, but through the sensitivity of their cells to vibration. When insects chew on leaves, plants detect the specific frequency of the vibrations and quickly boost defensive chemicals. When wind rustles a stem, the gentle sway triggers genes that strengthen cell walls. Some plants even grow faster when exposed to certain sound frequencies, a phenomenon still being studied. Inside each plant cell, the cytoskeleton acts like a tensioned web, responding instantly to tiny movements. Ion channels open and close, chemical signals pulse, and growth hormones redistribute. Vibrations, even faint ones, become information. Experiments show that vines can identify the vibration pattern of running water, even when no moisture is present, allowing them to grow toward future hydration. Other plants distinguish between the vibrations of friendly pollinators and the frantic wing beats of predators. To a plant, the world is a symphony of tremors, and when you stand in a quiet garden, it's comforting to imagine that every breeze, every footstep, every buzz of a passing bee becomes part of the plant's subtle perception of the world. Fact 43. The underground conversations through mycorrhizal networks. Beneath the forest floor lies a world more intricate than any city, more connected than any web we've built above ground. It is the mycorrhizal network, the quiet lattice of fungi and roots that allows plants to communicate, trade, and protect one another. When a root meets a fungal thread, a partnership forms. The fungus expands the plant's access to water and minerals, extending far into the soil like an underground compass. In return, the plant shares sugars created in its leaves. This exchange is so elegant, so balanced, that scientists call these connections the Wood Wide Web. But the network does more than share resources. It shares warnings. If one tree detects an insect attack, it sends chemical messages through the fungal threads, signaling neighboring plants to boost their defenses. If a seedling struggles in deep shade, an older tree may send extra nutrients its way. Some trees, especially mother trees, support their own offspring with remarkable generosity. There are even moments when dying trees release their stored carbon into the network, gifting it to the young before they fade. All of this happens silently, beneath our feet, in darkness and patience, a conversation without words, a community without borders. And from this underground wisdom, let's rise gently toward the delicate world of leaf patterns. Fact 44. The mathematical symmetry hidden in leaf veins. Every leaf is a blueprint of biological geometry, a living map where art and mathematics meet. Leaf veins don't form randomly. They follow principles of optimization and efficiency, branching like rivers, nerves, or lightning. Major veins act like highways, distributing water and sugar. Smaller veins weave outward like capillaries, ensuring every cell receives what it needs. Many leaves follow fractals, repeating patterns at increasing scales, the same angle, the same branching ratio, again and again. Others follow the Fibonacci sequence, arranging leaf positions to maximize sunlight while avoiding self-shade. Some leaves form reticulate veins, creating net-like patterns that allow them to withstand tears. Others use parallel veins to stay upright in harsh conditions. And the beauty is this: the pattern reveals the plant's ancestry. By looking at a leaf, you can trace millions of years of evolution. Each leaf carries a story, written in geometry. And as we drift from these patterns, let's step into the realm of migration, a journey plants take not with footsteps, but with seeds. Fact 45. How plants travel the world without moving at all. Plants are rooted, yes, but they are far from immobile. Their seeds are tiny voyagers, carried across continents, oceans, and centuries. Some seeds travel by wind, dandelions floating like parachutes, maples spinning like slow, descending helicopters. Others travel by water, coconuts drifting for months across saltwater tides, unharmed and ready to sprout upon reaching distant shores. Many seeds hitchhike on animals, burrs clinging to fur with microscopic hooks, sticky seeds adhering to feathers. Some even survive digestion, emerging far from their parent plant, nourished by the very stomach that carried them. There are explosive seeds too, pods that burst with internal pressure, launching seeds meters away, and seeds that wait for fire, designed to unlock only after flames sweep the land, ensuring they grow in newly cleared soil. Plants spread not by walking, but by dreaming, sending tiny versions of themselves into the world. And as these travelers drift outward, we turn to plants that defy gravity in another way entirely, by climbing. Fact 46. The ingenious ways climbing plants ascend toward light. Climbing plants rise not by growing thick trunks, but by leaning on the world around them with graceful ingenuity. Some use tendrils, slender, sensitive coils that reach into empty space, circling gently until they find support. Once they touch something, they curl tightly, pulling the plant upward like a slow-motion spring. Others use twining stems, spiraling around supports in a consistent direction, clockwise or counterclockwise depending on the species. These spirals follow mathematical helices, a choreography written into their DNA. There are hook climbers, gripping bark or rough surfaces, and adhesive climbers, like ivy, releasing microscopic glue pads to anchor themselves to walls and cliffs. Climbers invest their energy not into thickness but into reach. Their strategy is simple. Why build your own support when the world already offers plenty? Climbing is the plant's way of whispering. Sometimes elevation comes from embracing what surrounds you. And now, from the height of vines, we move gently into the language of scent. Fact 47. How plants communicate using invisible aromas. A plant's fragrance isn't just a pleasant scent, it's a carefully evolved language. Flowers release chemical bouquets to attract their favorite pollinators. Sweet, bright scents call to bees. Musky, warm scents draw beetles. Heavy, night-blooming perfumes are crafted specifically for moths. But scent also serves as defense. When a leaf is damaged by insects, the plant releases volatile compounds that warn neighboring plants. These signals can prompt nearby leaves to toughen, change flavor, or begin producing protective enzymes. Some plants emit odors mimicking insect pheromones, confusing predators. Others lure insects into traps with deceptive sweetness. Even fruits use aroma to signal ripeness, a biochemical invitation for animals to eat and disperse seeds. To plants, scent is not decoration. It is strategy, connection, communication carried on the wind. And from invisible air, we drift toward the world beneath the soil once more. The nutrient cycles that sustain all plant life. Fact 48. The quiet alchemy of nutrient cycling in the soil. Soil looks simple, brown, grainy, quiet, but it is a cauldron of chemistry, biology, and transformation. As leaves fall and decompose, fungi break them into fragments. Bacteria digest them further, unlocking nitrogen, phosphorus, and countless micronutrients. Earthworms churn the soil, pulling decaying material deeper. Each organism plays a role in breaking the old into forms the new can use. Plants absorb these nutrients through root hairs, sometimes directly, sometimes through fungal partners. Nitrogen becomes part of chlorophyll. Phosphorus helps create DNA. Potassium regulates water movement. Iron enables respiration. Every element has a purpose. When the plant eventually dies, it returns everything back to the soil, becoming food for future generations. It is a loop, a cycle, an endless return. Soil is memory made physical, each generation nourishing the next. Fact 49. The ancient wisdom of mosses. If you were to shrink yourself down and wander across the forest floor at the scale of an ant, the first plants you'd truly meet, the quiet elders, the ones who arrived long before towering trees, would be the mosses. Mosses do not bloom. They do not rise high. They do not shout for attention. Instead, they blanket the world in soft, green patience. These plants are among the oldest to ever colonize land, over 450 million years old. When Earth was still new to life above water, mosses crept slowly across rocks, stabilizing soil, preparing the ground for forests yet to come. They were the gentle pioneers that made Earth habitable for the giants that followed. What makes moss remarkable is its simplicity. It has no true roots, only delicate rhizoids that anchor it lightly to surfaces. It drinks directly from the air, from fog, from dew, making it one of the most sensitive indicators of environmental health. When the world becomes dry, moss does something extraordinary. It stops. Its cells enter a state of suspended animation. Water leaves, but structure remains. And when rain finally returns, moss revives as if awakening from a patient, dreamless sleep. Some species can remain dormant for decades. Mosses also regulate moisture in forests, acting like sponges that soak up rain and release it slowly. They provide nurseries for seeds, shelter for tiny invertebrates, and cooling blankets for soil. But perhaps their greatest gift is perspective. Because moss does not hurry. It grows millimeters per year. It endures centuries. And it reminds us that life doesn't need speed to flourish, only persistence, gentleness, and time. From this miniature world of softness, we step toward our final fact. A plant whose survival strategy unfolds not across the ground, but beneath the surface of the ocean. Fact 50. The seagrass meadows that breathe life into the oceans. Beneath shallow coastal waters, where sunlight ripples like liquid glass, lie vast underwater meadows, rolling fields of seagrass that sway with the tide like a slow, breathing heartbeat. Seagrasses are not seaweeds. They are true flowering plants, cousins of lilies and grasses that returned to the ocean millions of years ago. They bloom underwater, pollinate underwater, and anchor themselves into sandy seafloors with elegant, ribbon-like leaves that dance with every passing wave. These meadows are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. Each blade hosts entire microcosms, tiny crustaceans, juvenile fish, snails, algae, and species that live nowhere else. Dugongs graze upon them like underwater cattle. Sea turtles rest among them, as if relaxing in a submerged pasture. But their greatest magic lies in what we cannot see. Seagrasses are carbon vaults. They pull carbon dioxide from the water and store it deep in sediments where it can remain locked away for thousands of years. They do this far more efficiently than tropical forests, up to 35 times faster in some regions. This makes seagrass meadows some of the most powerful natural tools against climate change. They also soften waves, protect coastlines from erosion, and cleanse water by stabilizing sediments. Yet despite their strength, seagrasses are fragile. A change in water clarity, pollution, or disrupted tides can damage entire meadows. But when protected, they expand silently, transforming empty seafloors into thriving blue forests. Seagrasses remind us that even in vast oceans, stability is built from small, quiet motions, blades of green swaying with the tide, absorbing light, breathing oxygen into the water, supporting life with every gentle ripple, a gentle closing. And now, dear listener, we reach the end of our journey through 50 quiet wonders of the plant world. From ancient pines, carved by centuries of wind, to microscopic mosses that cradle the first spark of life on land. From twisting vines seeking light, to underwater meadows humming with marine breath. Each plant reveals something timeless, that life grows not only upward, but inward, outward, patiently, invisibly. Plants remind us that the world is always weaving, always renewing, always whispering lessons beneath its stillness. As you let your breath slow, imagine the soft rhythm of leaves unfurling, roots sinking deeper into cool soil, and distant seagrass drifting like a sigh beneath the waves. This is the quiet science of living, the gentle knowledge of green worlds, the heart of SleepLab Science.